So let's get started. So in this landscape, I really love the color. I love everything about it. You kind of have a low horizon. This means that, let's take a look at this from the side view. I'm so sorry if I sneeze. I'm not even going to bother muting them anymore. Okay, so we have a human standing. Let's say this is the small human. And they are on the horizon. And they're a tiny little human in a big world. And this is that little tree collection right here. In their little world right now, in their perspective, the horizon is low. The horizon line is low because they're tiny. So a tiny worm sees more of the sky than the expanse of the earth. They're so small they can't tell what's going on. That means that the horizon is low. Because they're low, these rocks right here are not compressed enough. Take a look at the distance between this rock, this right here, this one and this one. So line, and this one and this one. So what I'm seeing here is as if he's seeing everything from this perspective, but this lower part, which I admit is very difficult to seam into the water, the person is seeing them as if they just suddenly started flying, and started seeing the rocks in their exact distances from each other. So I'm assuming that nature doesn't separate rocks perfect distances from each other. So 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters, 5 centimeters. I'm assuming that nature is very random and likes to just really fuck shit up. That means that, one, we need more variety in the distances between these rocks, and two, let's talk about exactly what he's seeing. So what he sees here, his vantage point allows him to see the space in between each rocks, and this we will assign with a blue color. Sorry about my sniffles. I think I'm getting to that age where I just don't care anymore. I'll just blow my nose in public even if it makes people uncomfortable. Okay, so this is what he can see. He can see this space. But this dude, take a look at that. This dude, he can't see those distances between those rocks. All he can see is here. This is where his angles stop. Let's take a closer look. Come here with me. Let's take a closer look, my friend. Okay, so we have this rock, which I drew as higher than the other one. Let's pretend we have like these big ones and these small ones. Okay, what he doesn't see is the space in between. That's not accessible to him. All he can see is right past this line. So the rock is there from front view, and then the rock behind it. He doesn't see this space. He starts right here. This blue shows what he can see. All he sees is this, which is this from front view. That's perspective. That means that you have not I mean, I could just say, oh yeah, I'm just going to compress these rocks and that's all they'll do, but I want to explain why. These rocks right here need to be shifted upward to hide in front of these dudes. Okay, so we need to compress more. I'm just going to make that seamless. Excuse me. And then we've got these rocks, all of these babies, which need to hide some more of that. So you needed to compress more of the rocks because the landscape, the horizon line, is telling me you can't possibly be seeing all of that space. Alright, so I need to hide some of these rocks. You are seeing a really distant rock structure, right? So if the rock for some reason started growing really close nearby you, so this is where the other rock would go, then we'd have more and more spaces and they'd look bigger, and then eventually one would be in the full foreground. So this distance is increasing because it's more towards your vantage point. You are above these rocks, but right now these rocks are above you, or slightly above your line of sight, or at the level of your line of sight. So when we have a rock, we have two rocks, they're floating. One, what we see in our little window, this window is showing what this person sees. We have a big rock, and then we have the rock behind. When these rocks go down, right, then this person's perspective now sees rock number 1 and then rock number 2. We're seeing the space in between them, and one is above on the horizon line. So that was your issue here, that your perspectives were not consistent. So that's what we need to change. Alright, so That's the first thing that I changed. We had warped perspective, which just doesn't have, I know it's a small change, but it really does mean the world when you're using any chance you have to stack rocks in front of each other. You had this chance, you had this chance, this chance, this chance, but they all had this perfect distance in between each other. The perspective became warped. And what I did or tried to do is make these rocks overlap each other, just to make it seem like they do not have this equal distance. And if they did, they would still be compressed up against the horizon. What I can do actually is erase the rocks. No, never mind. They're gonna just look like they're doubled. Okay, so what's next? We've got the color of the green. There is an overcast light. So let's look at some references in case some sources. All right. So foggy forest, or actually rainy forest. Rainy forest. Okay. Let's look at these greens, which are not even green. They're brown because it's too dark. There's not enough yellow from the sunlight to feed that green. Let's say sunshine forest. Images. Getting these overexposed. I guess this is okay, but it must have been oversaturated. It does not look like real green. The actual greens we see. This one seems pretty okay. So we've got enough sunshine here, lots of sunshine on the floor, these beautiful boosts of like this dodge tool saturation, showing the real color of the leaves, and this the leaves on the floor as well, the forest floor. So we're getting real greens. And then we look at this, which is kind of the weather you've got going on. I mean, I'm not saying blue skies in the background. So this is the weather we have going on. Don't tell me it's off screen. Because right now, like, the entire hemisphere on this side is covered in clouds, and they're the lowest clouds. So you've got a pretty foggy scene set up. So what you got to do is desaturate that sunshine green, because it's not possible. There's not enough sunshine to feed that. Also, atmospheric fade and fog is going to also get in the way and not allow some of this to be visible. So we've got the surface fog of the water. Okay. And then some of that atmospheric fade. And then, finally, I'm going to try to duplicate the layer. So not only is it a less desaturated green, it is two-parter. It's a more blue than yellow-green. So this is the angle. This is the side I shift toward. So now we see how we get some of that green back, because we're moving towards the blue. So we're going to get more green back, but this time it's not going to be that unrealistic. I'm so sorry about my sniffles. They're probably so gross. I'm so sorry. Oops. Okay. So I'm just going to delete that, get that pretty green back. So you see we lost green when we desaturated, but we got it all back when we moved over back into blue. So I'm going to try to do the same thing on this as well. So what have we learned? Perspective and lots of issues with the greens that you chose. Then detail, scope, and perspective, and what kind of detail was visible through our perspective, and the distances between. It wasn't even green anymore after we desaturated it, and where it was before just did not work. You need sunshine for that kind of blue, for that kind of green, and that means the sun reflected pure blues off the water as well. The water should have had some blue. So you want to make the before look, you want to keep those greens in the before. Even though your wash says overcast, you're going to have to make more blue. So the weather, the time of day and the weather should have been changed and repainted. And that feels like it's going to be more work than just shifting the green. So to salvage the painting, shift over the green. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. So first before and then the final after. First after, sorry, and then the final after. And then we go here And then finally, if it was as many clouds as you're saying are in the sky, we would have darker clouds. So I'm going to get darken or multiply, whichever does the job best. And I'm just going to darken that. I'm going to leave some like little pockets of white. Maybe the sunshine is on. There is no cast shadow anywhere, so there's no indication as to where the sunlight is coming from. When that happens, it's an overcast day. And then you've got the horizon line. So you must like, it's very difficult to be so low as to miss where the clouds end. The clouds don't just go on forever. They have a little line where they just stop being cloud. We just see the atmosphere. You can actually see the layers of the atmosphere if you're far in the distance enough, and that's the perfect time of day. You can see what's happening in the clouds and the layers of clouds and that ceiling of cloud. So what we have to do is show where that distinction is between breathable air atmosphere and where the clouds no longer, where the clouds just are not heavy enough to cover. Even if the clouds are super heavy, they just don't drop in front of our house. They're still really, really high. And we need to show where that line is. So now it's good to answer the question, where is the sunshine coming from? So it could be top right, it could be somewhere behind the clouds. It's hard for you to really tell what's happening unless you have one of these questions answered. So something like that, so you can show just the behavior of the light. If there is zero light, then the clouds should be completely dark. If it's so overcast, there's no reflection on the water at all, which is very hard to do. You gotta be really, really thick cloud. It has to be really thick clouds and all that. One half of the hemisphere should be a little darker than the other, just at the top. Whenever I do sweeping brush strokes like this, I usually just zoom all the way out. Okay, and then what do we have left? We have white clouds and we have the reflection of the object on the water. So I'm just gonna get that and then erase away the location of the reflection. So it needs to be a little stronger than that. Just take a look. Now it's water. It's no longer slush, it's actual water. Then we've got those hiccups in the reflection. And just like that. Okay, so before, after. So if you wanted a more blue sky, you wanted this, you were gonna have to see this big ass white cloud. It's kind of reflecting the light nearby here, and that means we have all of this. Oops. We've got all of this. We've got more saturation, and we just have a more tropical scene. And then we have, see that blue in the background? I want to just exaggerate that a little more to actually show a tropical scene, and then get that white. Cast some shadows across the trees, so maybe some of the branches are casting shadows on top of the tree. So they see that casting shadows on themselves. Okay, so that's the only time we have this kind of saturation. But yeah, before all of that, if you wanted it to be an overcast, that's how low you gotta go. It's gotta work like that. Look at that reference we just looked at. This is a mature use of color, a realistic use of color. This is what builds mood and atmosphere and like the painting's narrative is a little bit more intact. Look at that. All you have, it's grayscale. All you have is edge work, and that's what you carry through. There's enough light to see some edge work. Of course, it's not at the same level of detail as a midday sun, but that's what I want to show you. So you had some compression problems, and then you had like a fundamental scientific understanding of what happens at different times of the day and what happens to colors and the surface of the water. You could afford some more texture on the surface of the water, not too much though. But beautiful piece. The size of it, I could shrink it. I mean, it feels a little boring. Just give us some more. Give us some more of these. Fill it up. Not just like one of them. Let me see if there's something similar to this before I jump into the figure drawing. Beautiful piece here. Okay, so you have this Dutch angle, but you also have like an asymmetry in the Dutch angle. Alright, so if you are going for like a dramatic Dutch angle here, you really need to go for it. Alright, so we do this. If you really wanted that for some reason, if there was some kind of character in the foreground about to kick somebody's ass, we usually have Dutch angle when there's an incoming, what is this blob monster I just drew? When there's an incoming like battle scene, we usually give the Dutch angle because we want to make the viewer feel like they're in the thick of it. They're about to also be how their ass is kicked. So that's, if you're going to go for it, just go for the full Dutch angle. If not, just straighten it out and just let it be a scene, a simple scene in a simple frame in a narrative, like a panel in a comic book. If this is a crack, if this right here is a crack, that means that the entire, there is going to be some dark, like bounce light, but this entire section here is going to be darkened. Shit. It's a really cool, like, architectural layout. That's really cool. Okay, and then you've got this bounce light, which bounces off the reflectivity of the floor nearby. There was no other light nearby. This is all you had. And where it happened on the stairs. Okay, I'm gonna try that again. And then you've got the reflectivity. So before I did that, I'm gonna, before I did that, and you got the fact that it's reflecting on the surface right over here. And then these guys, I'm not sure what's illuminating them, but they're having the illumination as if the light is shining directly on them. It's almost the same level as this. This is the plane that looks directly at the light source. So these need to be brought down. Okay, you're creating a mood with the singular light source. It's a closed off cavern. It's some sort of secret crypt where secret knowledge is stored or something like that. It's supposed to feel mysterious and inaccessible. And you just have that little window peeking through. So now you have the issue of edge work. This is supposed to be an edge of the crack of the wall, right? So why is it so furry and fuzzy? There's two kinds of edges you can have, an angle or one object in front of the other. One object in front of the other means these objects have not shared space. So they need to be fully just separated. They don't share space together. So I'm using the lasso to create this distinction, that this is in front of this. Like that. The compression is all wrong and doesn't feel like it's fading into the distance, so I'll take care of that. Kind of feels like it's uplifted as if it was a lip or something. And then you've got the undersides of these chips as we're seeing them. I know you went for painterly, but your painterly does not exempt you from geometric anatomy. That's exactly what you keep. You get rid of everything else except geometric anatomy. So you've got the underside of these. You can keep this other side here fuzzy. It is an angle edge. It's like a 90-degree angle, but bloom and light bounce and the flare of the light might cause it to, you know, like this, blur out a little bit. And then we've got the fact that we don't have any no man's land values here, showing where the wall has been broken to allow some light in. So I'm going to show where the break of the wall happened. Grab my dodge tool and just show how the light has been peeking through this way. This is necessary. For a light source to really be a light source and illuminate this much, we really do need to see it in action somehow. Okay, you can always blur it out if it's a strong light source, but we need to see some indication of it. It's the only thing that's happening, and it's illuminating this statue. And then we've got like what's happening in these walls. So we might have some bounce light at the very top bouncing off the floor to the ceiling. The ceiling bounces on the wall, and then that causes this like illumination right at the top. And this bounces here and bounces on that wall, and that causes illumination as well. So we have this also gets bounced. And then we have just a little bit of bounce on this side, but because the light is doing bounce, bounce, this is going to be more illuminated than this top half. This gets all of it, of course, but this is going to be more illuminated. I kind of worry about making it too much of a bounce. There we go. And then you've got the fact that these two walls are stopping any kind of bounce light from coming in. Multiply. No, just darken, thank you. Photoshop. So I'm thinking about it as a reflection. So a reflection as well as the shadow, the cast shadow. So this cast shadow is going to be different than this one. This one is more nearby, so this one's going to be more straight. Whereas the light can access this part, so this one's going to be a little longer. This light isn't perfectly in the middle, it's on the sides. So that means we do this. So we took care of the reflection light as well as the cast shadows. And all you gotta do is blur. Okay, how am I gonna blur this? Okay, and then blur, Gaussian blur. I just need to blur the cast shadows, and then I erase away. La, la, la. Not so much that. Just so they're not that sharp. So this is if the surface area is reflective. I'm just assuming that surface area is reflective, okay? And then you've got the color. Color, orange is a very specific color. It's like yellow. It needs sunlight to happen. If these were beige colored sandstone or something, their amount of yellow they have, just there wouldn't be enough yellow in the light source, in the shadow, to allow that yellow through. So wherever the light is getting weaker, we get less yellow. And that yellow brings out the natural yellow inside the sandstone. So I've completely grayscaled here, and I'm going to just track down exactly what's happening with the light source. I'm going to saturate around the mid-tone of this wall that's receiving this. So right here is that mid-tone. The real color of the sandstone is coming out right along here. And all of this is beside the point if you're not gonna, the object that's getting all of this light, this dude, this little sculpture, none of this matters if you haven't revealed that, you know, this guy is getting everything. So he's getting all of this, and it cuts off wherever the cast shadow happens. And it just gets weaker when it turns away. And then depending on how outward this is, this just gets a little bit. Maybe the bottom. This is getting some of the bounce light back from the wall nearby. And then the cast shadow should be like that. Okay? If it's facing perfectly that we don't see the circular shapes. So you had a lot going on, buddy. You had so much. And how do you break this down? How do you prepare for instances like this? A form study. That's how you do it. Form studies prepare us for all the bad. Okay, they get us ready for everything. And then finally, if you want to bring in some contrast, you can. Just like that. What I'm going to do is blur the cast shadow the further we get from the light source. This one gets really smudged out. It's further away. And then the color itself is a little bit too saturated. Just everywhere. Just the color itself is so unusual for a scene. That would probably make it more of a... And it's hard to tell. It's a little bit... Yeah, it was a little bit too green. So I'd probably redden it just a little bit. If the sun is that low, that means that the sun isn't high to cast the shadow downward. When it's daytime, the cast shadow points down, and the whole house is dark because the light, the sunrise isn't, the sun isn't at an angle in the horizon, and then the hemisphere. So this feels like more like sunset. So that's why I'm making it more red, and where it was before, which was a little green, which is more yellow. Okay, and then we've got finally some more reflection down this way, and then some more hot spots here, and then I get the sunlight, soft brush and reflect that sunlight back up, and then we've got that initial bloom that points at the camera and kind of glows past that. And then if this is a shiny material, wherever the hot spot is, the ray, the hottest ray of light, that's where we get that bounce back. So we have more activity than what you had before, more believability, more realism. And now I know that light source is coming from one direction. I know what's exempt from the light source. I can go back and edit the background and edit the space that isn't getting any light as I need. If there's a little flame, like a little weird little plate of blue fire or some other cool shit you could do. So you got a little plate, and it's like this blue flame or whatever, and you got a couple of them. And you got some that are pretty close to the camera. Then now you have another new color to bring in, the reflection of it on the floor. You just got so many options now, so you can bring in real color. And then because those blue lights are the only light source outside of the primary, which is not accessing the two outer corners of the room, we get to paint these parts blue. But very carefully. Okay? That's only if you choose this blue flame thing that I did. If you don't want to bring any other light, it just depends on what the story was that started this painting. It's still slanted. It's still an awkward painting. You might want to just move this over here, have some character. It's just awkward. If there was an action scene, then you can do this and show where the dude is standing. That would be really cool, to show like the silhouette of like a really angry dude who was about to just take this scepter and destroy the land, and then the wind is kind of blowing through the window, and you just kind of see some subsurface scattering through his, what's it called? And he's kind of ready to take it, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to take it. And his tunic, and you got one foot, you got another foot, and somebody's trying to stop him, and they're like, no, stop, don't touch it, motherfucker. And then he's like, no. At that point, you know, you can actually use this setup for something cool cinematically, and that's why you went for that Dutch angle. But for now, it's pretty much boring because it's just sitting there and not telling a story. Okay, so maybe you can, you can shrink him to make the room look humongous, or you can enlarge him for a close-up, and he's about to steal the sword, and someone's saying, "Please stop! Don't touch that Russian relic." I don't know. Is this a what is it called, that Soviet insignia? It's really cool looking. I don't know, to create a tangent, you can just shove this guy over here, and the Assassin's Creed man is about to take all this shit, and there you go. So before I did the Dutch angle, I guess I'm just gonna leave the Dutch angle for, no, I'm not. Also, to make the room look bigger, all you gotta do is just shrink this passageway, make it like this small, and the passageway, well, the room will feel colossal. Just lost my voice. Colossal, you know, the room will feel bigger. And always look out for the horizon line, whatever is happening. Hammer and sickle, thank you. Istebrak, will there be a reflection of the light source on the floor? I see that there is a reflection of a reflection, but what about the light source itself? No, the light source arrow, if you guys track down the light source arrow, I've showed you guys this map. If you haven't seen it, just watch that how-to lighting video. I'm not really sure what I named it, but it goes in, the light comes in this way, the light source is outside, it's making this kind of relationship, and then it just bounces back. And each time it bounces back, it gets weaker. So if this was the original stream, and then it gets more space, and then finally lots of space. The light can't bend and then just do, okay, I'm just going to go over here. Light works in straight lines always. It's a vector. Not really because it gets weaker, but because of obstruction, I guess. Okay, and this whole area is under light source, so you need to go in there and clean some of this stuff. You need to clean this scene, this right here. You need to get some edge brushes and just clean that up. You need to clean the separation, but these edges don't blend. You have a lot of issues with your edge work, a lot of issues with your lighting, a lot of issues with your color. You need to grayscale and do some form studies ASAP. Light, form, edges, detail. No, it's not. Is this a good mantra? Carlos asks. Light, form, edges, detail. Light and form happen at the same time. Light doesn't just, you don't just cast some light into the canvas and then put some form in the way. Light and form happen at the same time. So say form instead. Form includes light. Edges are detail. Edges are the first in the list of detail. So that means you can contrast to detail, you can shrink your brush to detail, or always and forever sharpen edges to detail. So not really, Carlos. Don't worry about getting a mantra. Just try to find the, it's back and forth, it's recursive, it's a big tangle. There isn't one linear way to do a painting properly. You make a mistake and you fix it, make a mistake and you fix it. Istebrak, how do I make a mountain volcano type of terrain look giant in a landscape? You have to have a comparison that we can, like banana for scale, you know that? Have you heard of that? Stupid. You just get something that we can recognize as a man-made structure. It'll make the volcano look massive. Also, if we're all humans and we don't really fly, we don't have wings, so it means we're never really looking at stuff from a bird's eye view. That's only recent. So if you want to make the volcano look huge, you draw it in three-point perspective, meaning you're on the floor and the volcano is towering above you. Its top is very small and its base is very large. Also have a little thing for scale, like a little doorway, you know, those like Asian doorways in the middle of nowhere, or a little house, tiny ass little house, maybe a human. It's always nice to draw a tiny little person to make it look huge. I don't know, Gabriel. I can't tell where the sculpture was. It was perfectly in the center of its pedestal. I'm nervous about colors because I tend to desaturate stuff a lot. Any suggestion about how to avoid that? If you have a good language of form and knowing how much value to include, you shouldn't be nervous about color. Color takes a time to adjust into, so you might want to just avoid color for a while until you perfect your use of, I'm sorry, I'm running out of breath. Excuse me. Until you perfect your use of values and you use the right exposure level and the right value per color. Each color has a different, you just have to grayscale a color wheel and you can understand that. Toaster for scale. Okay, so we have this piece right here. Oh, you guys wanna write that back to me? Last night it was bitches get stitches, or before. I don't know. It'll happen naturally. Okay, it'll happen naturally. So this piece, I'm looking at it. It takes me a while to tell. Beautiful piece, by the way. It takes me a while to tell that I'm looking at a skull with an arrow in it, and a deteriorated helmet, and the water. It takes me a time to see that. This is the focal point. This is the portrait. This is the bust. This is the pinup right here. So we need to show where that's happening. And when we have a skull, we still have some remnants of the signatures of a human face. The bone of the cheekbone is still going to get some light. Let me zoom out for these. So that's going to help me recognize the skull. Remember back to our villain days. The skull, the forehead light, the high cheekbone, and the nose or the missing nose all makes it look very accessible to us, makes us recognize the skull faster. This cheekbone will also get some light, not as light as whatever was nearby, close to the light source. This inside of the nostril is going to get a little bit of light as well as a cast shadow. Trying to see how much of a cast shadow though. Then the shoulder is going to get some light. This is me considering those straight lines again, if you guys remember those. So I need to go back because I need to get some edge work done. So I'm erasing away at the new layer, casting a shadow there, casting a shadow there, some layers there, casting a shadow. Okay. And then we have another issue which is making this very difficult to recognize is just creating planes, creating differences between each object. So creating like a nice outline around each object without using lines, outlining it somehow. So this seaweed right here, it's just impossible that it's this opaque. Seaweed is very, very translucent. So it's going to get a lot of subsurface scattering. So what I'm doing is I'm throwing in the right value. I'm going to saturate. Remember, what are the components of subsurface scattering? If you guys remember. Make sure it's the right color. So it's not just green, it's a blue-green. So I just did them both. What are the components? 2 words. I don't want to see a sentence. I just want to see a word. Some color correcting. So, okay. So these greens, remember what I said about the green before? This is all underwater. The filter is a blue-green water color, whatever the components are. It means we don't get yellow greens. We get blue greens underwater. We get blue everything. We get blue oranges. Blue oranges just means more of a red. So over here, it's way too close to it. I'm just going to shift it down to the hotter red. So we want the blue version of everything. A blue version of red is just a more pink red. Just a paintbrush, darken. Illumination and saturation. Saturation and exactly. Saturate and illuminate. That's what subsurface scattering means. So before I do any of that, I'm just gonna create some edges right over here where some of the seaweed overlaps other seaweed. I haven't illuminated it to the point where it feels like it's you know, the focal point, but just enough. Subsurface scattering only happens at the hottest ray of light shining through that see-through object. And then you've got the cast shadow of her on top of this. So you got her cast shadow from that stuff behind. And then we have the color code of the light itself that's shining through this seaweed. And that color, fuck my life. And that color is this one right here. So she's got her own light source. Remember, her light source, she should be, if we were going to be really accurate about this, I don't know why I think, oh yeah, because the boobs, right. So she should be like this dark. She's in a silhouette, the light is behind her. But there's a special light, a cheat light that we added, that we always use as artists, that we throw on main characters, and we create this beautiful little distinction between the atmosphere and the object. So anything that is responding to the background light gets the background light's color, and anything responding to the main primary universal light source that we're using to show off the characters of the studio light we use on the object, on the character, and the light on them. And the objects on them. Sorry, I'm kind of getting really tired. I don't know if you can tell. Starting to slur my words. Okay. And then we have rim light from the nearby light source. So now we're combining atmospheres. We're grabbing that color and just making some rims happen just around here. Wherever there's something facing that background light source. We need to show where these are happening. So now it's starting to create a nice distinction. It's not feeling like one big kind of like miasma of objects sticking together, and it just takes time for you to discover what it is, like those puzzles or those illusion paintings. Now it's starting to read as so any moss or like growth on her skull has caught the light and is creating that beautiful rim. Beautiful, beautiful piece. So much story involved. I hope this isn't one of those times where it's like someone else's art and I'm critiquing it, and someone posted, you know, somebody else's. I hope this is actually the person, because I've had that's happened before. Someone posted someone else's art and I nearly critiqued it, and it wasn't the right artist. It wasn't the actual artist. I don't know why people do that. Why do you guys post art that's not yours? Or whoever does it, stop. God. Okay, some more of this mossy growth that's catching the light. And this only happens, and we can only tell it's caught the light in these little bursts of light that shine through, catching anything translucent floating or growing on top. That weird corally growth. Okay, I did have one other suggestion, but let's take a look. For it to feel like underwater, which is something you requested, we need more color correction. And for her to feel like she's separate from the background even more, we need more of this fog of the background kind of coming through, and we erase away it wherever we had her object. So we're using underwater atmospheric fade, sort of. This is going to take me a while, but I do want to show you the impact. Son of a cow, fatty, fat lady, stinky, fat, ugly lady. Sorry. I erased wrong. Poor, stinky, fat, ugly lady. Man, what did she ever do to you, Istebrak? In the shower, that's one thing she didn't do. Okay, so I'm just creating a distinction between her. I'm not going to stay this light, but just to get me started. God, why am I fat shaming? Just blame Photoshop, alright? Just blame Photoshop. I'm going to erase all of this. I want this contrast back. Mother fucking stinky fucking. Okay, foreground gets dark. It's all the way in the foreground. It's stopped everything. Let me see some more. So this time around I'm gonna just try to lasso these little pieces instead of 10. Fucking fat, stinky, fucking. Ugh. Okay, that's another. Control yourself. No, that part. Actually, yeah. No. Oh, yes. That's what I need to. Oh, no. That's not what I'm. Oh, Istebrak. Alright, select inverse. Right. No. Nah, just shut up. Just, you don't know what the fuck you're doing right now. Just don't use lasso. Just stop. Told you guys, I'm losing my mind. And then it's this layer right here, this rock formation. It will get atmospheric fade, but not so much as the background, because it's closer than the background. So now we have this nice distinction. Of course, again, it's not going to be that bright. Edges are going to be, I can't even look at the comment section right now. The foreground is always darker than the midground, than the background, because one, it's closer to the camera, it has more contrast, our eyes are getting more info. It's also, what's the word, like the atmospheric phase, it's more in the way. There's more air in the way between us and a far object than us and a close-up object. And that's pretty much why. So you had all these reasons why we couldn't really tell what was happening with her. The background wasn't involved, and we've included all of these. And now we've involved the background. We've provided more proof of, or more consistent footprints of that universal light we cheat with to show the character. And then this is still armor. We still need some of that reflectivity, maybe some bounce light. Okay, and that seaweed needs to have even more subsurface scattering on it. Sorry about the mess. I'm trying to work fast. And then some more saturation, because now the greens get to be a little bit more, because that universal is in the way. Of course, they're not allowed to be that green. That's dodge tool. So we just grab that nearby blue, just the color that the debris, the particles in the water, all make this color happen. Not sure exactly what, maybe algae, I think I read, why the water is blue, also the color of the sky. And then finally we have the light source, which is really close to the canvas, not inside the canvas. It's not like this, but it's close enough that we have to make that background just a little bit lighter, and the object's getting some light just a little bit lighter, so that we create this spotlight. So we use the background color, which isn't affecting her that much, to create a spotlight on her. So I'm going to boost some of this contrast. I want her to be the main focus again. Boost some of this shine back. Boosting along here. Sponge, saturate. Saturating along here. Still, those little barnacles, I guess they're called, are a little bit too orange, considering they're underwater. And then I'm going to darken the corners of the canvas with a nice dark blue-green. Oops, there we go. Probably use multiply for that. Zoom out. No, new layer. And then get the soft brush. So some of these changes help make it look like it's underwater. Some of these changes have made her the focal point again. Just do some more. Actually that's not even working, because I'm gonna have to do this. Put this on dark, and there we go. Now I'm going to use that dark navy. So if it's underwater, we don't see light anymore. And if we're far enough underwater, we just, we don't get that. This big boulder would have cast a shadow. That would have been really cool to explore. And then we have a chance right here, now that I've darkened, to show some more of that rim light. And this is a chance where rim light does happen, because there are growths. So rim light is just little pieces of hair, translucent hairs that have caught the light, or translucent anything. Could be underwater weirdness that catches that light. Okay, and then lighten her up. Oops. Lighten her up again. So I'm constantly trying to make this distinction. I'm trying to show where her cast shadow cast over the seaweed. And all of these little tricks are working like a border, like a frame around her, showing off her silhouette against everything. So see what I'm doing here. This is the subsurface scattering, but I'm not going to let it, I'm going to let it create a trail. Of her cast shadow on this subsurface scattering, so we still have that frame, that curve down. And I'm just smudging. It's not everywhere, so don't be too generous with your subsurface scattering illumination. And remember, it's a combination of illumination and saturation. Okay, see that beautiful cast shadow. And then to create even more of a distinction between her and the background, which I think you overdid, I'm going to bring in some more to show where the breathing room is between her arm and that blue illuminated water. I'm making edges between all of these because it's one object in front of the other, and that's the principle of making edge work happen. That little fishtail is in the way. And again, I'm not letting this light trail off all the way to the edge. I am trying to create a frame around her. And then one more time around here. If it wasn't a her and they look like boobs, you should probably correct that. And now I'm just going to color correct one last time, making those barnacles more purpley and pink to match those little goldfish. More redness to them than yellowness. These guys down here, they're all in shadow. They need more redness to them. And I'm just adjusting. And then that blue-green on the seaweed. Alright, and that should be it. A little bit more blues here and there, whatever's getting some secondary light source. And blue. And then we'll look at the before and after. Hopefully this created the, I'm sorry about the mess, but hopefully it created exactly the effect I would want to see. A little bit more atmosphere, less attention to the background, which is taking up a lot of space. Underwater is like atmospheric fade time, like on steroids. It's a lot more atmospheric fade than you ever had above water because it's such a thick atmosphere now. So you get, you know, you get real chances to show depth. Right, over here there is some light peeking through. I would edit some of these and just to show off some of these sections. So the cheekbone caught some light. I would go over anything that I mean, I can send you this copy, but make sure that you're not letting colors bleed over. That's my correcting. So you shouldn't have like a halo of pink anywhere. Okay. Well, bubbles would actually work if you had a reason to have any bubbles. So if you had some kind of airway, or fish make bubbles all the time. Have you ever seen fish underwater? They're always making bubbles. Goldfish images. It's a good goldfish picture. These little freaks are always making little bubbles all around. The way they walk around, the way they flap their tail when they go near the surface, when So that's just the fish itself is creating at least underwater currents. And then you have maybe like a gas being released underwater. Bubbles are just a great little prop to have underwater. I mean, don't overdo it. Don't make it look like a fish tank, but just doing some final edits. Okay, so I hope this helped you. Really amazing story. This whole section feels empty the more we look at it. So you might want to have something else that's here, maybe a sword, maybe a hilt, just to show that she was a knight, to kind of complete that one last time. Okay, beautiful, beautiful job. Okay, so over here, another example of how, before I get to the boobies, another example of how doing this is really great. So we're going to do this, and we're going to just give it some time, and then I'll unveil it, and we can see how big of a problem it's been. So let's talk about the boobies. You created a space in between the breasts, even though, and this is relating to the first lesson of today, even though the perspective would never have allowed us to see the space in between the breasts. So we've got breast number 1 and breast number 2. I won't draw circles. Let me just draw. Okay, breast number 1 and breast number 2. From side view, from 3/4 view, it does this and this, right? So why are you forcing the visibility of the thing in between them? This is just awkward. This doesn't feel like there is any real visibility. If your reference had it, it would not have had this edge. This gradient trails all the way inside. So how to correct that? You just get this value, and you just take it all the way over there. And that was that. Should actually be a lot lighter. So now this explains what's happening in the 3/4 view. However, now the breast sizes are different. So that was a problem you had that you didn't notice you had till you fixed this other problem. And that usually happens. We fix one thing, and because we fixed this one anatomical problem, 4 more are revealed. We fix those, and slowly we start having less and less issues. Okay, so we zoom out, and now we just got to transfer that edge to be a little bit higher to depict a symmetrical breast shape. Boobs are probably the hardest thing to draw. I had the biggest trouble with them, and that was only because I slacked off on my form studies a lot. And I like to draw. I used to draw a lot of pinup. So breasts were a big prop in that pinup, and not being able to pull off believable mounds was really... You just had like these plastic Barbie doll boobs, and they were just so gross and fake looking, and it looked more like raunchy pinup than, you know, an elegant pair of breasts. So, and I realized under rendering is something that I talked about on Patreon this month, but under rendering is the key to rendering well when it comes to anything that is non-dense. Don't overdo it. Don't overdraw. It just takes just a little bit of a boost, and it starts to work. Please, I know I started talking about boobs, but I swear to God, if the chat goes wild, I am gonna kick all of you out, including the mods. Just grabbing this. There is a cast shadow, and I'll add that cast shadow in a second. But I gotta get this value down first. Oops. By the way, to all the Muslim students, happy Ramadan to you and yours. Hope your Ramadan is nice. I love eating watermelon during Ramadan. It's like the best. Just the best. It was my favorite thing to do, and it was the thing I craved the most when I used to fast. Don't anymore because I'm a bit sick, and I can't go a long time without eating, but it was nice when I used to do it. It's really fun. And then illness just had to ruin everything. But basically what it is I'm drawing boobs and talking about Ramadan. But you just fast from like sunrise to sunset. And it's nice. So yeah, If you're a Muslim brother, you should probably stop watching this video. You fucking pervert. Okay. And then finally, just over here, because breasts act all funny against a dense object, they kind of just get squished. But yeah, all you boys who are fasting, if your dad catches you watching boobies get rendered on TV, you're probably going to get beaten up by a sandal. So just to spare yourself having to fast, you can't eat, and you're also getting beat up, and you're all like sad and teary-eyed, and you just don't want to get beaten up today. Just stop watching that video. I don't want you to get in trouble. Alright. And then one object in front of another creates an edge, and yada yada yada. Probably shouldn't say yada yada because for a lot of you these are new rules. Okay, so let's unveil. Okay, so the breasts before, and then after, well, not full before. So now the breasts are kind of complete. What are you guys saying? No boobs for Ramadan? Hypocrite. Yeah, no boobs for, you fast from everything pretty much. I'm going to just fix the contrast here. I don't have time to manually paint it. I'm going to just have to do it like this. Alright. Look at that tiny ass little head. Okay, so we've got these massive shoulders. And even if she was wearing shoulder pad, look at the size of her torso and her leg. This was the head of a 14-year-old on probably like a 30-plus-year-old's body. Or like a 25-year-old's body. Okay, so we need the size of the head increased at least if her arms are that big. If you have the same issue, do exactly what I just did. Do you know how liberating it is to just turn off the portrait, especially if you're a portrait artist? It's so fucking liberating because you get the chance to just stop focusing on the thing that draws you in the most all the time. And if the thing you specialize in has been muted for just a second, you can go and fix the stuff you have issues with. Stuff that you don't know how to fix unless you know, turned off the portrait. Because the portrait's always going to be there to bother you. You're always going to want to go to render the portrait before you finish up stuff. All of you need form studies. This little problem you had with the breasts, and I'll show you before how symbolically you drew them. You all need form studies in your lives. All just like, you know, instead of Jesus, instead of saying all y'all need Jesus, you guys, that's the savior for art. I probably shouldn't. I mean, I'm talking about Muslims, and then I'm talking about sandals and getting beaten up. I'm just so controversial today. And boobs, and oh my god. Okay, I'm going to increase the size of her nose just a little bit so she doesn't increase the length of her nose. That's why you make a woman look older. You just increase the length of her nose. So she doesn't look like a baby. Do you see that? She had no cheekbone also. And then the full before. Okay, so before, see that awkward space? The 3/4 view. We don't see that space. We see it from front view, but we just don't see it from 3/4 view. Just get rid of that. Have a confidence in your forms. Have a confidence in your edges. Oh, right, the cast shadow. Darken. And then the cast shadow. That's as much as I can do now, because I gotta go. Alright. Any religious kingdom, Istebrak religious. Oh, hail form study. What have you learned from Istebrak today? Ugly, shitty old ladies and boob jobs. GG today. Stinky, ugly old ladies. Izam, what are these people saying? You deleted my religion is boobs. What else did that other person say? Let's focus on the lesson. Okay, so to recap, please make sure your head is large and she has cheekbones, so she actually looks like she has grown in all parts of her body. The background is too dark considering how much light is hitting her. If you wanted a spotlight, then just show the spotlight. Show how the spotlight, show how the spotlight has done that. I think that would do better to explain where all these values are coming from, where all these cast shadows are coming from, and why her head is so difficult to see because the shadows light is right above her. So something a little bit like that would do wonders for your painting. Darken. No. Lighten. No. Normal. Okay. And then we have that and that. And of course we erase it wherever. Because he already took care of the fact that she's got light on her head. Okay, so that might help you. I really like the shape of this weird object right over here. It's unfinished, of course. But this would just do a little bit more than just that messy background. This would kind of explain what's happening and why we can see so much of these cast shadows and why light is so above her. And then of course we have to make sure that's bright enough. And then however dark you want the background to be, it just depends on the nearby universal light source. It could be this bright, it could be that dark. It's your choice, but I really recommend a change in the background color. The head was tiny. And do some form studies. Okay, that's it for today. If you guys are joining the character design challenge or you want to join it, go to istebrak.com. Okay, go to community. Come on. Come on. Okay, go to community and then download the resource pack. Read everything. Make sure you follow all the rules. To upload your challenge, go to Google Plus and join. Read the rules here. And make sure you follow the rules when you post. Everything that I choose for critique is off this wall. We're getting up there with members, so please make sure you're following the submission rules. No 2 submissions a day. And a couple of you have reposted, and just keep reposting your character design for the challenge. Stop posting every day a different version. I told you guys that just post a couple and then get some feedback and then just spend some hard time painting it. I don't want to see an update for every microscopic change you made to your concept. Go back, do some real work, and then show a substantial difference between the one we critiqued and the one you're uploading again. Stop posting every single day like a version of your painting or concept that has a tiny little difference between each day. Sorry, I can't say anything right now properly. From viewers like you, thank you. To Istebrak, we love you, man. Thank you, kid. Just form studies is sufficient, or is it good to do some more studies? Just form studies enough is enough to prepare you for any kind of edge problems that we saw today. The underwater skeleton is a little bit more advanced. Form studies alone aren't going to change those. I think that person is already really good with their form studies. The issues they had are outside of what form studies can do for you. I mean, if you can get better at atmospheric fade, maybe. But everyone else who I critiqued today, you all need form studies in your lives. You all need to stop it. Stop trying to be creative. Open up a gray background and paint some blobs. Paint some geometric form studies. Paint some landscapes of blocks. Paint something that keeps your mind looking for the edges. You all train your mind to look for the edges. Write that back to me. Anyway, have a great day, guys. I will see you guys on Tuesday. Get your concepts done. Pretend that Tuesday is the due date. All right. Bye, everybody.